Our motto or tagline at First Presbyterian Church in Tyler is rooted in a compassionate faith. That tagline could come right out of today's reading from the law. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Saturday, August 13th, 2022. God seems to have a special regard for the poor and the vulnerable, so much so that there are a number of laws governing the treatment of the poor, the widows, the orphans, and the aliens who lived among the Hebrew people. Today we'll take a look at just a few of those laws. I've chosen a brief section from Exodus chapter 22 to illustrate the concern God apparently has for the most vulnerable members of society. Laws like these are interspersed throughout Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy, but these particular ones come almost on the heels of the Ten Commandments, so they seem especially relevant to me. You shall not wrong or oppress a resident alien, for you were aliens in the land of Egypt. You shall not abuse any widow or orphan. If you do abuse them, when they cry out to me, I will surely heed their cry. My wrath will burn, and I will kill you with the sword, and your wives shall become widows, and your children orphans. If you lend money to my people, to the poor among you, you shall not deal with them as a creditor. You shall not exact interest from them. If you take your neighbor's cloak in pawn, you shall restore it before the sun goes down, for it may be your neighbor's only clothing to use as cover. In what else shall that person sleep? And if your neighbor cries out to me, I will listen, for I am compassionate. If your neighbor cries out to me, I will listen, for I am compassionate. That pretty much sums it up. What we have here are laws protecting aliens, foreigners who happen to live among us, widows and orphans, and the poor. These are laws we would do well to emulate today. But it is worth asking, why the concern for these particular groups? And the answer is rooted in an understanding of basic human nature. Widows, orphans, poor people, and aliens were the absolute most vulnerable people in society. In many ways, they still are. But in ancient Israel, without the basic web of safety nets we have in place today, these people whose position in life wasn't simply precarious, it could easily become life-threatening. Widows, for example, could be in a position with no one to support them, no one responsible for their care. Orphans could face the same situation. More broadly, all four classes of people would be easy game for other people to take advantage of. People in desperate straits can be coerced into accepting terrible living conditions simply to be able to survive and make ends meet. But what kind of a person would do such a thing? Well, just think about what happens today, every day. How many times have you received an email that looks legitimate and promises a prize or gift if you'll just follow a link? Click that link, and someone will have put a virus on your computer that can mine such information as your social security number, your bank account information and login, and all kinds of other information that they can use to steal money from you. I've spoken to countless older adults who have unwittingly given out sensitive information on the internet or over the phone to scammers, pretending to be representatives, for example, of the IRS or of their bank. Then there are the emails that come telling us that the sender is an attorney in some foreign country who represents the estate of a long-lost cousin of ours who has died. If we will simply wire that attorney a little bit of money, he'll be able to send us $1 million or more. But people who've been caught up in that scam have found instead their bank accounts cleaned out. There are unscrupulous characters today who try all manner of ways to steal our information so they can then steal our money. And it was the same way in the ancient world, only with different techniques. But always, it is the most vulnerable in our midst who are the most susceptible to these scams. The promise of a windfall to a desperate person is just too much of a temptation, and they let their guard down only to be taken advantage of. But for whatever reason, God has special regard for the vulnerable and special disdain for those who take advantage of them. In a word, God is compassionate. These laws may seem outdated to us, but they point us in the direction of caring for the most vulnerable in our midst. At the end of the day, that's what the law does for us, the law of the Old Testament. I began this week by asking whether we are bound to the law or free from it, and I suggested that the answer is not an either-or proposition, but a both-and proposition. We're free from the law, and yet we're bound to what it really teaches. Now, we can't be expected to be justified before God, even by fulfilling every last letter of the law. But the law continues to do something really important for us. As John Calvin taught us, the law is our teacher. It guides, directs, orients us to lives of joyful obedience to God. The law can't possibly address every last situation we might face, but the laws we've seen this week and today are good illustrations of the ongoing way the law guides us, even today. When we return next week, we'll look at some of the dilemmas we face in the Christian faith. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.